Let's talk a little bit about Sage Mode Minato, shall we? A lot of people make many bold claims about Sage Mode Minato, stating that Sage Mode Minato could have ended the series earlier if he had used Sage Mode against Obito. But is he really that strong? Well, let me tell you what Minato himself said about his Sage Mode. His words, not mine. I'm not good at Senjutsu. It takes too long to need that chakra and I can't maintain it for too long. I've never really used it in an actual fight. This is a pretty definitive statement in my mind. The character himself said he is not good at Sage Mode. He stated why and also said that's why he never used it in battle before. Minato's Sage Mode is clearly much weaker than Naruto and Jiraiya's Sage Mode by this statement alone. If Minato never felt the need to use Sage Mode before, while Naruto and Jiraiya heavily relied on it, it means Minato's Sage Mode was not useful in battle and only became useful against Yubidara because regular ninjutsu could not affect him. That statement by Minato is clearly Kishimoto himself blatantly telling us that he is not good at Sage Mode and that's why he never used it before. He might as well have made Minato break the fourth wall and wink at the audience when he was saying that. We clearly see that his Sage Mode is indeed pretty ineffective because it does expire after one regular Rasengan. That was the extent of Minato's Sage Mode, so yeah, he didn't lie when he said he couldn't keep it for very long. Compare that with Naruto, who by the war arc could unload dozens of Rasen Shurikens with one Sage Mode charge, and you'll see why Minato wouldn't even try to use it in battle. Furthermore, Minato is so fast and had such a great reaction time that the speed boost provided by a weak Sage Mode would probably be negligible for him. You see, buffs in Naruto do not multiply your strength or power or whatever, they add to it. However, it may seem like they multiply the power of a character who is actually weak. For instance, when base Naruto got Sage Mode, it seemed like he got 10 times more powerful, but that's simply because Sage Mode provided a flat buff that made that weaker version of Naruto 10 times more powerful. It's like in MMORPGs, if you're a level 1 character and you get a plus 10 to your strength, the power spike will be massive. While when you're level 100 and you get a plus 10 to your strength, it certainly helps a bit, but it's not nearly as noticeable as when you were level 1. For instance, that's why Part 1 Sasuke got an insane power boost whenever he used the curse mark, but in Shippuden, you could barely see any difference when he activated it. Because, Shippuden Sasuke got hundreds of times more powerful than Part 1 Sasuke, making the curse mark buff much less impactful. So, the flat buff a weak Sage Mode would provide to Minato, who is an extremely fast and powerful shinobi, was just not worth the effort of taking his time to gather Nature Chakra, exposing himself to the enemy, and it wouldn't last for very long. Therefore, it was completely ineffective in battle for him. Otherwise, he would have used it for sure in many other situations. There is no reason why he wouldn't. The classic counter-argument for Sage Mode Minato being way stronger than base Minato is that he had a perfect Sage Mode, and that is true. He had the markings of a user of perfect Toad Sage Mode, and I actually think that was mostly Kishimoto not wanting to make Minato ugly, to be honest, not giving him those markings of a frog-like transformation, but even still, I think him having perfect Sage Mode indicates that he probably have a good control over Sage Chakra, but could only use a little bit of that chakra at a time. While Jiraiya, for example, didn't have good control over it, but could amass a much larger quantity of nature energy within his body, and that's why he acquired the frog features when using Sage Mode. Naruto, in contrast, had both great control and could gather large amounts of Senjutsu chakra at the same time. Therefore, he also had the markings of a perfect Sage Mode, but his Sage Mode was far superior. All in all, Minato's Senjutsu is completely irrelevant for determining Minato's strength, as he never used it in battle when alive, and only used it in a very specific situation where he had no other option. So people should stop bringing up Sage Mode when discussing versus battles with Minato, for example, unless if it's against a character with a 6-path Sage Mode that can just nullify regular ninjutsu. But if that's the case, Minato won't have much of a chance anyway, seeing that the only time he attempted to attack Jubidara with his Sage Mode Rasengan, he was absolutely humiliated. Also, if you think Sage Mode would give him such a great boost, why wouldn't he activate it when Guy was fighting Jubidara and Minato served as a support fighter? Because it wouldn't make much of a difference, as he wasn't trying to effectively hit Jubidara. Sage Mode would be utterly useless in that situation, and he could just blitz in front of 8-Gate's Guy just fine without Sage Mode. So there you have it, Sage Mode Minato is essentially the same as base, normal Minato. The difference is that he has to expose himself to attacks while gathering nature energy, and it doesn't really help him all that much. Like this video, help me spread the video around, and also subscribe to the channel for more content like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching.